Apparently, Moistcritikal and fucking Sneako had a debate on age of consent. Oh no.
Yeah, so let's talk about what we came to talk about.
Yeah, man. So, with all of what's going on here,
Bro.
why are you so insistent on like the age of consent being like unreasonable? Or at least that's the impression I and most people gather from the way you speak about it.
That's a valid question, and I want to first ask, like, what's your issue with my opinion on the age of consent, age of marriage?
Okay, focused debate.
Because I feel like
Good.
age of consent should just be an accepted number, and I think the accepted one is 18. Like, regardless of where you talk about in the world, I feel like once you start talking about someone under 18, you're basically just talking like a predator. Like, I feel like 18 is a pretty well-established number for most sensible people. At 18, you're going to college, you're living your own life now, you're outside of your family nest. Anything under that, you're still a kid.
Okay. It's not 18 in most of the United States where we both live, right?
Yeah, but that refers to like Romeo and Juliet laws, where if you're like 19 and with a 16-year-old, it's not technically illegal, but you're not a 19-year-old, right? So why would you be arguing for like a 16, you know?
First off, I'm not arguing to lower the age of consent. I don't believe in the age of consent. We can get there. Okay. I want to establish some terms first.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not even just with Romeo and Juliet laws. There's a lot of states where it's 16 regardless of Romeo and Juliet. And then you go to Europe, most countries are 16. Japan, I think they just changed it. It was like 13 or 14, and now it's 16. Brazil, it's 14. I saw that from a Nelk Boys video. They were joking around about how they should, like, when in Rome, they're in Brazil, so they might as well sleep with a 14-year-old, right? Or across the world, 18, I want to see, like, why do you think 18 is the age of consent?
Because that right now is the...
You can argue that it's arbitrary. It definitely is. I think the reason 18 makes sense is because quite a lot of things happen when you turn 18 that sort of send you from childhood into adulthood. And the biggest thing that happens is you typically are out of school by the time you're 18. Some people leave school earlier, but usually 18, you're basically done with school. And then you're either going into college where you're being treated as an adult, university, or into full-time work, or just into work in general. And I think that there will be edge cases. There will be people who turn 20 and they just leave school. They don't get a job. They don't go to college and they still live with their parents and they're very immature and they might not be mature enough to have sex. There might be someone who leaves school at 16 and goes to college and gets a full-time job and then they're independent and then they can actually make their own decisions and shit. But typically, like, it's an arbitrary threshold that we just keep in place because it's to minimize cases of harm and power abuses and exploitation. So no. I went to university and I had a job, which was your mom and your dad and your sister and both your grandparents at the same time.
The one that makes the most sense. I guess to piggyback off what you're saying, so if you're traveling right now, if you go to Europe, are you going to be comfortable like hooking up with a 16-year-old? Like, just because it's legal there, would that make you feel comfortable?
No, I don't hook up anymore. I'm not
saying that you do, but I'm saying if you were, single and looking for someone, would you feel comfortable with it being a 16-year-old if it's in Europe versus US?
I wouldn't do that. Like, I would not have sex before. I think sex, like, out of wedlock altogether is something that we should not encourage anymore. And having the age of consent, having that idea encourages people to have premarital sex, right? Just that term, age of consent, means you're consenting to something that we shouldn't be doing. So no, I would.
Well, you would want an age of consent for people getting married as well, right? Because marital sex can still exist with people marrying kids. So, okay, change the question. What's your age for marriage then? If marriage entails sex, it's already a way of dodging the question. It's so stupid. Like, he knows what's being asked of him. Fuck me, I hate this guy so much.
Wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay, so then instead of let's take it away from like premarital sex, would you feel comfortable marrying a 16-year-old? Like, would you meet a 16-year-old with romantic intent if you're in Europe and maybe marry a 16-year-old? Nothing sexual.
I probably wouldn't personally, because I don't think that I'd be on the same mental playing field. I like to have intellectual conversations. I like to be with women that are around my same age, because then I can have conversations. I like to to relate to them. You know, I think there'd be too much of a gap. But other people, like, if they're able to get along, then I don't see why that's so much of a problem.
But why don't you see that as a problem? So for you, you're recognizing like this person's much younger than me. It is a kid. Like you are talking to.
Okay, so
where's the video where Sneako gets absolutely fucking logged in a debate?
Who did Jesus pray to?
The Father.
Okay, that sounds like there's more than one now.
Well, there's more, because there's more than one hypostases in the Godhead. There's not more than one God, because God in this case refers to the nature, the divine nature, as mentioned in 2 Peter 1:4, the divine physis in Greek. So we understand there's one nature. That's what we refer to when we say one God. These persons have the nature. God is one in nature, tri and hypostases. But the hypostases aren't separate beings, because being is once again proper to the nature. So there's one being in three persons.
What's that word you're using?
Hypostasis.
What's your definition of that?
Person, individual subsistence and a rational nature.
They're separate or they're together?
Distinct, not separate.
What's the difference between distinct and separate?
It's the fucking Holy Trinity, isn't it? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's what I don't. It's like, oh God, if you go to the Wikipedia, hang on. I love this. It's the kind of thing I would draw. The Father is God. The Son is God. The Holy Spirit is God. The Father is not the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is not the Son, is not the Father. Yeah. Pretty simple, isn't it? What does he say? How does he handle this?
Well, separable means they can be taken apart. We're not saying they can be taken apart.
Semantics.
It's not semantics, it's metaphysically different. Separation implies like this, I can separate this from myself, but a distinction just implies that there is a difference between two things without being able to separate them. And they're different insofar as their identity as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They're not different insofar as their nature once again.
Okay. Are you sure you believe in one?
Absolutely, I believe in one God.
Okay. So when you pray, do you pray to God or
He's getting fucking mogged, bro. It's like, I feel like that's a pretty basic question, isn't it? Like the one God in Christianity. It's like, how did he think that a Christian wouldn't have an answer to that?
pray to Jesus?
Either or, it's the same thing.
Either is that applies too.
Yeah.
See how the language is already.
You can make a linguistic point if you want. The point is, I could say, oh God, or I could say, oh Jesus. I'm just saying there's not really a distinction between saying either of those things.
Okay.
It's like the difference between saying, oh Ya Allah and Ya Rahman. It's just you can say either or, but you're referencing back to the same being, right?
That's just two names.
Yeah, that's the point. And we're just giving you two names of persons in the Godhead.
You're saying two distinct beings.
See, you need to not say separate entities. These are distinct persons, but they are one being. So that's just not characterizing what I said correctly. So is that your contention, Christianity, that we're allegedly tritheists or polytheists? Is that your contention?
No, that's just why. That's why I don't. It never makes sense to me.
Well, I just broke it down.
Let me explain. I speak to Eastern Orthodox, Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian Scientists, Mormons. Everybody has a different definition.
Yeah.
Whether it's a form, it's a distinct being. Jesus is God. There's only one God. There's three gods. There's the Holy Spirit.
Which Christians are you talking to that said there's three gods?
Oh, a lot. The Christians are never consistent about what they believe.
Well, anyone who told you
heard the hypotheses, I've never heard.
Well, that's the standard formula that it's been for centuries, for nearly 2,000 years. This has been our standard formalization. I mean, once again, I don't know any Christian who says.
The first time I've heard a Christian say, like, I ask, okay, you believe in one God, and then he said either or. If you played to one, you wouldn't use the word either.
I don't understand what you mean by that.
You said you believe in one. You say you believe in one, but you asked, who do you pray to, Jesus or God? You said either one.
No, I'm saying
either or.
Well, you can twist my language if you want, but as I already made clear, we're talking about hypostases. We're talking about the fact that any of them are God according to us, but we still pray to any of them as God. There's not really a distinction in regards that they are God. But there's no difference between that and saying you can call upon any of the names of your God and it's still referring to the same being. That's not necessarily a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sort of rhetoric is why I love Christianity and why Tawhid makes sense to me.
But that's not rhetoric. That's calling it rhetoric isn't, you know.
I'm not calling it rhetoric.
You said that sort of rhetoric.
You're explaining it right now. It still doesn't make sense.
That's called a personal incredulity fallacy. So appealing to your own lack of understanding of a thing does not entail a thing is not true. That's fallacious.
This is equal.
Fuck London, man. The Speaker's Corner is so shit. This is all people talk about there. And they talk like this. Appeal to incredulity fallacy. Oh no.
Let's define these terms. Let's
in high school.
before we even get into, let's define these terms before we even get into this conversation. What is a child?
I would use the age of consent. Under 18 would be a kid in my eyes.
So a 17-year-old who's 364 days, that's a kid?
Yep, I'm gonna use very hard
Loki's wager. Go. Go.
set terms. If it is under 18, even if it's 17, 364, that's still a kid.
That's a kid. Okay,
I think it's important to have these hard lines in the sand where it doesn't have this kind of wiggle room.
Okay, why does that define kid?
As I said earlier, at 18, at that point, you're going out of high school, you're going to college, you're living on your own.
Why does your head start here and not here and not here? Why does it start here? What about if you got an microscope and go like one cell down? What's going on here? What about here? Here.
You're no longer, a child under your parents' roof, for the most part, extenuating circumstances, of course. But at that age, you are starting to become independent. You are no longer just in your parents' household a kid. You are now going off into the world on your own.
You do admit that varies for most people, right? A lot of people don't move out of their parents' homes until they're 25, 26, 27. A lot of people don't.
There's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of people graduate high school 16. A lot of people graduate high school 20. It's a huge variable. So to set that in stone is that this is when you're a kid.
It's not actually a huge variable. It's like there are 2 or 3 years. But that's why. Why wouldn't you just set it to the higher age that people are more likely to leave school, which is 18? Because obviously if you make it 16, then you're lumping in a fuck ton of people who are still in school. I feel like by 18, most people are done with school, or they're basically done. It could be an argument to make it 19, because I think once you're at 19, no one is in school.
And this is you're an adult. That doesn't apply to most people. So why would you define a kid and an adult if it doesn't apply to most people?
Because it needs to be defined. Otherwise, you can get into this really gray area where you, like a lot of the things you say, can be misconstrued as you wanting to have sex with a 15, 16-year-old.
Who construed that?
A lot of people, because, I
don't think anybody
clips that I played in the video, you were saying like the age of maturity, the age of development, and then you use 16 and 17 in that clip. So for the age of marriage.
The definition of an adult is 18 years old.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fine establishment right there. Anything under 18 would classify as a kid. I think that's important.
Okay, but you're getting that from what? From personal experience, from the government, from the law? Because that's legally in America, that's when you become an adult, correct?
Yeah, legally.
So you're following the government's definition of an adult.
I think there needs to be a definition, and that one's been around for...
Damn, Sneako's a lot more prepared for this debate than he is for the fucking Islam-Christianity one. Does that say something? Compared to the... Oh, God. He clearly has a bit more of a dedicated interest in one of these topics than the other one. He's been getting tips from probably people like... Muhammad Hijab and shit like that, yeah. From Speaker's Corner pedos. I'm sorry.
For a long time, and I think that's the one most people accept as the closest to, like, yeah, this is when you become an adult.
It actually hasn't, right? 200 years ago in the 1800s in America, the age of marriage...
Yeah, we can't live like that. We're so much more advanced than that. Why would we play by those rules? Because at that point, are you going to start arguing that we should be able to start wedding 12-year-olds? Like, is 12 too young?
That's not the point. I'm saying, you're saying that the U.S. defined adult as 18. Well, I'm saying 200 years ago, the age of marriage in America was 10 and the UK was 7. Right? So if the government decides to change it, you're saying it's 18. If the government, maybe if Kamala Harris gets elected, then the new legal age of an adult is 25. And there could be reasons to say that. They graduated college, they don't leave the house until this age. Their brains don't develop until they're 25. Your frontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 25 years old. A lot of people aren't making serious money. They're not able to live independently. A lot of things that you could use to classify an adult don't happen for the new age American until 25 years old. So if Kamala Harris raised it to 25, would you then say that that's the new age? Would you agree with that?
I think that'd be totally understandable. Like, right, I think that's fine.
So then does that make anybody who sleeps with an under 25-year-old, does that now make them a pedophile?
No, I don't think necessarily that makes them a retroactive pedophile.
So then what's a pedophile?
But it's an accepted definition of 18 for a long time is
not for that long.
Even in medieval periods, people knew marrying a 12-year-old was sus. I've never actually looked into what the actual standard was for age of marriage in medieval times. I do know that when you hear about a king marrying a 12-year-old, if you look into the details, from what I've seen, is it's usually like they kind of just marry for family alliances, but they don't really do anything. Yeah, at least that's what's written about it. Yeah.
Not for that long, and not through most states, and not through most countries.
Is it really once you can have a kid? Like, have you bled yet? They wouldn't consummate until 16-ish. Okay.
Across the world.
Do you see why this is like a weird take to have though? Like I don't think you're coming at this from a place of you wanting to fuck a 15-year-old, are you? Like to go back to that question, is 12 too young? Do you think 12 is too young?
I think 12 is too young for me. Yes.
Well, for you, do you think?
Oh, I hate that. Oh no, it's that. Well, I wouldn't do it. Fuck off. Fuck off.
12 is too young in general. I feel like that should be an easy answer.
12 is too young in general, correct? Because,
okay.
Yes.
And I don't think you're
I want to
define.
But what you're saying, your definition of adult, is not even the actual definition. Do you know what the definition of child is? Like, anybody watching this can Google it. You can Google it too. The definition of child is somebody who has not reached puberty yet. That's the definition.
Yeah, and then you get into like a beebophile or whatever, as opposed to pedophile, and those are all.
I don't know. I have no idea what those terms are. I don't know what that is, but I'm saying that's the actual definition. When somebody reaches maturity, it's based off of biological and physical maturity.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it varies for everybody. Adulthood is not something that you can set in stone because it's different for the entire world. Right? I moved out when I was 14. A lot of people don't move out until they're 25. I went through puberty when I was 17. A lot of people went through puberty when they were 13, 14, 15. It changes for everybody. So for you to say that this is the set in stone age and say you're a pedophile if it's under 18, and then if you're over 18, you're fine. Well, then that's a weird line that doesn't make sense. So you're going to say this person is a terrible person if they're 17 years old, 364 days, and right after that, they're good to go. Well, it changes for everybody. So we have to have something, a definition. We have to be realistic with it.
I think the answer for that is if someone who's like 19 or 20 or 21, even 25, and they hook up with a 17-year-old in 364 days person, it's like, I guess you'd probably want to ask, you'd assume they met on the day, because obviously they met them earlier, that might be different. Morally, you would struggle in this debate to say why it's like so much morally worse than if they do it the day after. That's because it's not really how it works. It's not really how aging works, or experience or anything like that. Again, the point of making it illegal is because that just seems to be the cutoff point that reduces the chances of exploitative and unbalanced relationships forming. And you would also want to ask a question maybe about someone who just couldn't wait until this person turned 18, right? Because if they're willing to break that one barrier, why wouldn't they go another day down, another day, and another day, another day? Like, where's their line? Yeah. But yeah, the point is that by 18, like, everyone has gone through puberty, basically. And everyone has gone through basically all of school. Yeah.
Everybody. Well, we don't. But you're saying we, but that's not even the case in the country we live in.
Why argue against it? If you don't want the age of consent to be lowered, why are you making arguments that the same people who do make? Right now, what you're saying is kind of what NAMBLA used to say, if you're familiar with NAMBLA.
I have no idea what this is.
NAMBLA was the North American Man-Boy Lover Association.
Right, because these people they want to have sex to take advantage, and they don't abide by the rules of marriage. They don't have any sort of morality. They
don't do it because Muslims told them to, or what?
They just want to have. I'm arguing for this because I believe in marriage. Sex should only be within wedlock. That's why I'm talking about this.
Why, if you're arguing, we can take sex out of it. Why, when you're arguing for marriage, do you want it to drop? Like, okay, 16.
When did I say? Just because I don't believe in the age of consent does not mean that I want it to drop. Like, see, that's where the internet can go apply that. Just because I'm saying,
well, no,
because you're saying the definition of an adult is 18. I'm saying that's an arbitrary number, and that makes no sense. We should encourage marriage when people reach maturity. That makes much more logical sense.
That's even more vague, though. But also, you directly.
It's vague because it's different for everybody.
When someone can legally drive, they should be able to legally marry. You did say that to me.
Right. When somebody is legally ready to drive, the same thing. I think adults should drive cars. That's why I told you that.
Yeah, but 15 and 16-year-olds can drive cars. You said when someone can legally drive...
Across the world, 15 and 16-year-olds can have sex too. I think that people should not operate... But see, you keep thinking that I'm saying this...
Just so you know, although the age of consent in the UK is 16, it's still immoral to most people for like a 25-year-old to bone a 16-year-old. I feel like most people would object to that in the UK. Like, okay.
Just because I want the age to be lowered, that's not what I'm talking about at all.
That's what it comes across as, though. When you
maybe with the internet brain, because people in the West, they want to have sex all the time and they have a different sort of mindset, right? Here in the Middle East, I'm in the Middle East right now. They want to get married and then have sex.
Do you think power dynamics matter more instead of focusing on the ages of 16, 17? The power dynamics matter, well, yeah, but that's why the ages are set there. The point in the 16, 17, 18, like the point of the 18 cutoff line is that that's where society, at least in America, seems to have decided that the power dynamics issue is mostly solved for most people at the age of 18. Whereas if they make it 17, there are too many people who would be on the weak end of that power dynamic. And then 16 even less.
So people, just because I'm saying this does not mean automatically lower. No. That's not the case at all. I want to ask you then, because you're insinuating that it sounds creepy and that I sound like a pedophile. What's the definition of pedophile?
It is an adult who is attracted to children.
Yeah, it comes from the Greek word pedo means child and phile means love. So somebody who loves a child.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just exactly what
attracted to a child.
I like. Yeah, say the Greek or the Latin. People love that. That's what he means by he likes to have intellectual conversations.
To a child, somebody who has not reached physical maturity.
Yes.
That's the definition of child. Somebody who hasn't reached physical maturity. It has nothing to do with 18. The definition of the word talks about physical maturity.
No, the actual definition of pedophile would be to do with puberty, not to do with an arbitrary age. If you want to be literal about it.
Not the U.S. government definition that you're basing it off of.
This is why you call them nonces, okay? Because a nonce can be a pedophile, can also be an ephebophile, or whatever the fuck the other one's called.
But there needs to be an agreed upon place. Otherwise, you get into this area. Again, you said when you can legally drive, you should be able to legally marry.
Right.
We don't have to talk about sex. Do you think it's okay to be marrying a 15 or 16-year-old? Probably not, right? Like I would imagine, probably not.
It depends. So this is where the age of consent becomes arbitrary. I don't even believe like that. Consent is a weird thing to even speak about, but it should be the father, right? If I want to marry a girl, I shouldn't even.
This is how you all sound.
I shall offer him sexual favors.
Sexual favors, but he's just a boy.
But we are British.
Touché.
What the fuck is that from? Shag. 78 subscribers. What the fuck is this? I need to download that and put it on Twitter.
And just get consent from her. I should get consent from her parents. She should want to say yes. Her parents should want to say yes. That's consent from the family, and then you get married. That's the Islamic way. That's the only way that makes sense. This American way of this girl wants to have sex now, she gave consent, and then you get all these false allegations like, oh, she was drunk, oh, she took it back, oh, she retracted consent. All this stuff, like there's not even a specific.
None of this has anything to do with age, by the way. What's the Islamic way? Like in the Islamic world, where people just they can't. There's no trial, or what? Like, or there is a trial, but there needs to be like a arbitrary number of witnesses. What the fuck? Which Islamic country are we talking about? Like Pakistan or the Emirates? These countries all have different ways of addressing these issues as well.
Way that we can define consent. What is consent? Some people say it's yes. Some people say it's like nonverbal communication. Some people say that it doesn't count because she was under the influence or she was intimidated. Even this is an arbitrary, is a weird way to define when you're allowed to be in a relationship with somebody.
You're kind of talking around it, though. Those are all very different things. Like I said, we don't have to be talking about sex. I was talking about marriage. The question was, do you think, and you said when you are legally able to drive, you should be able to legally marry. Do you think it is okay?
No Muslim country does it by the witnesses thing anymore. So that would mean they don't do it the Islamic way then, do they? It depends. I don't know. Is that like a hadith thing or is that a Quran thing? The witnesses thing? I have no fucking idea. Or is that just a way that they used to do it and it's not actually the Islamic way? Okay. God, I wish Moist actually knew that then. Because if he says the Islamic way, does he mean by the Islamic countries that exist or does he mean the Islamic way, like the Sharia way?
Okay for an adult to legally marry a 15 or 16-year-old.
Okay, well, by my logic, if the man is physically mature, if he's went through puberty and he's mentally ready at the age of 16, he's an adult. If he wants to get married to another girl who becomes a woman,
I just said an adult. Is it okay for an adult
Right,
to
and I
legally
established,
marry
but we haven't even established exactly what an adult. So if somebody goes through puberty and they're physically ready, they're biologically ready, they're an adult. So the two 16-year-olds can be considered adults by my logic.
We're not talking about two
What are you talking
16-year-olds.
about?
We're talking about an adult.
That is an
Because what
adult.
You're arguing it. It's
What,
from the
what I'm
perspective
saying is
of
that
an adult.
so then what is an adult now?
Okay. We'll use your age. Someone who is 25. Is it okay for someone who is in their 20s to marry a 15 or 16-year-old? And let me explain, when you're doing your arguments, it's coming from an adult. I've never heard you say, like, two teenagers should be able to marry. Like, I haven't heard that with these takes. I'm talking about someone in your position in the 20s. Is it okay for you to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
But teenager, even bringing up this term that has nothing to do with child and adult. So there's two phases. You're a child, and then you physically mature.
I don't know why you can't just
your
answer
body
that
becomes.
directly.
I'm saying the difference between a child and adult is when you're physically and when you're biologically, when you're mentally ready to have kids. That's the teenager is not even. So you added another term in this. It goes child and then adult. You mature, and then you're physically ready.
Well, I didn't add it. You brought in two 16-year-olds. We were talking about an adult and a 15 or 16-year-old. I was not the one that brought this into the equation.
Right. If it's illegal, if it's illegal, because we believe in Islam, we believe that we should obey the law of the land. If that's illegal,
Okay.
if that's not permissible, then we don't do it. We don't break the law.
But we're not. I'm talking about your personal beliefs. Do you think someone in their 20s should be able to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
To someone in their 20s should be, I mean, I personally wouldn't do it. I don't know many people who would do it. The maturity for people in the teenagers in the West is getting much worse, but there are...
We're talking globally. Let's just talk globally. Like, do you think it is okay for, and I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore, anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
Well,
Why would I tell them
because
if everybody's consenting, if everybody's okay with it, if the parents are okay with it, if nobody's being harmed, if it's going to be okay, if they're both abiding by the rules and they're not hurting each other, why not?
But they're still, like, they're at best a sophomore in high school. They can't consent to something like that. Like, do you think of
Okay, so now it's
16-year-olds can
sophomore in
consent to
high
something
school
like that?
versus senior in high school. What's the difference? Like, what's the difference
I'm
maturity-wise?
just saying, like, I'm giving you a perspective on where that age would be in life. Like, they can't consent to something like that.
That's probably you're bringing up an outlier that's probably not going to happen as much. I'm saying that these are arbitrary reasons to say, like, a sophomore versus a senior in high school. How much different were you really maturity-wise? It wasn't that much of a difference. The reason that you keep saying 18 is because in California, where they post Hollywood movies, it's 18. And so everybody across the world, this is the standard that we believe in. This is the correct age, exactly on the dot. And if it's anything under that, are you going to say here that if a 21-year-old got married to a 17-year-old who was almost 18, is that 21-year-old a pedophile?
I would say that is a morally bad thing to do for sure.
Not morally bad. Not morally bad. Is that?
I wouldn't call them a pedophile.
So when does somebody become a pedophile?
I would say when you have this position, you are.
You're not answering the question.
And you are. I'm explaining it.
Okay.
When you are in your 20s and you
Sneako's
start
going
preying
his
upon
bulldozer
someone who
mode,
is still a child, a 15, 16, 14, anything under 18,
Come on the ropes.
a 21 and a 17-year-old.
But you still haven't specifically defined what a child is.
I did.
So then why? Okay, there you go. So if pedophile is love of children, and your definition of adult starts at 18, if the 21-year-old marries a 17-year-old who's turning 18 tomorrow, he is a pedophile based off your definition.
As I said, if he would wait, he would not be. Then yeah,
well, not wait. Based off your definition, that person's
in that position. There is no reason to not wait for the legally established, agreed upon definition of when you stop being a child.
Okay, so now we get into the question of whether the pedophile thing, is that a moral answer or a legal answer? Because it seems like morally, it's pretty much, okay, it's almost there. That morally, that's not a pedophile. Legally, it is. But those are two different things.
But they don't need to be. They can coexist. You recognize that, right?
No. Then that's when you muddy up morality with the law. Now you're allowing the government to determine morality, and that's where things get muddied up, because if they changed it with like they did before, like 200 years ago in the 1800s when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then, they were not a pedophile. Today, legally, they are a pedophile. There's no consistency there.
But
you can't allow the government to determine morality because it changes all the time. Tomorrow, if the US government legalized bestiality, if the government legalized incest, based off your logic, there'd be no reason why that's wrong. Can I ask you, Moist, do you think that incest is wrong?
Yes.
Why is incest wrong?
There is under no circumstances any excuse for anyone of the same bloodline to be romantic like that. By no means at all.
That's not the answer. Why? That's not a why.
I really think it should be pretty obvious why.
I don't know why. I'm not.
He got his Sneako become the 2017 Destiny. Oh, God. The answer to this is that incestuous relationships, it's not because every single one ever is always bad necessarily for both people. It's because of the incredibly high likelihood and strong association those relationships have with abuse, with the fact that they're very difficult to leave, with the fact that they have like really almost like embedded in them like an inherent power imbalance because of the way like family structures work and shit like that. But again, none of these are necessarily the case, but they are so much more likely with incestuous relationships that we just generally are better off discouraging it. That's why. It's got nothing to do with like the gene pool or anything like that, because again, like that, you can just, condoms can fix that, right? Sex, like birth control can help with that. How do you counter adults? Same thing. Incestuous relationships with adults can be a problem, is much more prone to abuse as well, because it's harder to leave the relationship, because the family being involved can put so much like extra pressure on both sides. And there's also, depending on which family members they are, like if it's a brother and sister, like an older brother and a younger sister, that means like it's really difficult to disconnect that from power imbalances because they grew up with each other. Yeah.
I'm asking
even. I know where you're going with this, because I've heard this argument from another streamer before about like the ethics of incest. If they don't have a kid and thus don't pass down like bad genes that lead to a bad child. I've heard this before.
So what's the why is it bad?
So I want to hear your answer, because are we going with legal or are we going to follow some sort of morality,
it is
some sort of consistent morality? Why is incest wrong?
Incest is wrong because I believe that no family...
Why is he arguing this? It's considered forbidden in Islam, and explain why. Now, Sneako might know that, but he's arguing it because he wants to demonstrate that Sneako's position right now is that Moistcritikal believes things just because the law says so. He doesn't actually know morally why it's the case, which means that if the American government that he grew up under said the age of consent was 10, he'd be okay with that because that's what the law says. So Sneako's trying to get him to explain his beliefs morally. Yeah.
Dynamic should ever include a sexual relation.
Why?
I don't think that, because it is not healthy. It is a bad thing to do. It is a horrible thing to subject someone to.
But why is it horrible? Because who told you that?
It's what I believe. And also, if you do have a child with your own kin, the child suffers.
Okay, but say it's two gay brothers.
Oh,
Chris Tyson and other Chris Tyson and Chris. If they're two brothers and they decide to be in a no, genuine question. It's what you believe in. I want to figure out where your beliefs come from. You personally believe that.
My beliefs come from a place of what I believe to be moral, where I don't believe that anyone in the same family has any position to be romantic with one another. I don't think that's a
your
healthy
morality
dynamic.
comes from yourself?
My morality comes from like the world around me. I don't have...
Okay, so
now we're going even further. Now it's the question of where does your morality... Because religious people love this, because they can just say the morality comes from God. They got the fucking cheat code. But as a secularist, you've got to be... You got to have a few reasons for where your morality comes from. Like, even if you say you're a deontologist or a consequentialist, well, why are you those things? Where did that come from? Whoa. And then you have to go into whether it's egotism or moral realism. Where's he going to go? Where's he going?
If the morality comes from the world around you, then by your logic, if you lived in America in the 1800s where the age of 10 was okay, and where the age of 7 was okay in England just 200 years ago, if you followed the world around you, that would be okay. That was fine.
And it's not now, because we've evolved past then. Like, we are significantly further along to recognize this was a bad thing. People evolve. Like, people, like... Here, we'll go even stupider with this.
So your morality is ever changing. It changes with the people.
Morality is changing. Like, you are not born and then stay the same the entire time. as you take in more information, as you grow, so does your understanding of the world. That's how it should be.
Let's see where this goes.
Let's see where this change.
Okay, let's say we continue this, and morality is ever changing. And then you, Moistcritikal, you're living in America, and now everyone around you now believes incest is okay, as long as you don't have a child that's going to come out deformed. You have.
Then I would disagree with it.
So your morality does not come from those around you. It comes from somewhere. If your morality comes from around you, you would agree with everybody that's there. You would agree with the government. You would agree with the law of the land. Where would you get?
Everyone has their own individuality.
Individuality has nothing to do with morals. Your personal,
it does, because your morals are formed from your personal experiences and from what you take in around you from the people around you.
Okay, but if you take it in from the people around you, then incest would be okay if everybody was doing it.
If you personally didn't agree with it, it wouldn't be. Like, if you want, like, I don't know why you're doing the argument a little incorrectly, but I know where you're trying to go. But the point is, like, the fact of the matter is, people will always have their own perspectives on things, unless, of course, you just follow what you are told 100% of the time. Like, for you, you're pushing back against the age of consent because you don't like being told that this is what it is.
Destiny watched this for 2 minutes and concluded that Sneako is too dumb to even watch the video. To be fair, Sneako is doing a better job in terms of a debate performance than Moistcritikal is right now, so... I think Stephen didn't give his boy a chance. Didn't give his boy enough of a chance there. Sneako is pretty dumb though. Yes, it's just this is ironically the one debate where he's done his fucking prep, where he's done his homework, where he's cared enough to do the investigating.
Based on this, you believe that, well, actually, there's a couple other extenuating circumstances in these cases.
That's not what I believe in. My belief comes from something that's consistent. It comes from the Islamic way. It comes from the Islamic way because nothing else makes sense. The Western way is always adapting, and now we allow people to change their genders, something that was admonishable only 10 years ago. See, you're following the ever-changing morality. Only 10 years ago, a man becoming a woman was a mental illness. It was something that was shamed upon. 10 years ago, if Chris Tyson was going on a Mr. Beast video and he was there dressed up like a girl, and he was saying that I'm taking puberty blockers, hormone blockers, everybody would admonish him. In a lot of places, he would be excommunicated. He would say, absolutely, I do not want kids to take hormone blockers and change themselves forever. But today, that's allowed. Today that's pushed. Today that's okay. And then everybody else kind of falls into suit. There are a small minority of people in the West, people that believe in God. They say that this is absolutely wrong, and then they get banned for it. You can't follow the people that are around you, the ever-changing morality.
You can't follow a line of questioning. You keep going off onto these tangents. Look, at the end of the day, man,
it's not a tangent.
You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the point is, people are always going.
No. You cannot believe just whatever you want to believe. You cannot.
What you are doing.
If you believe bestiality is wrong, you should not be in society. If you believe incest is okay, you should not be within the community. You should be excommunicated. These are things that there's some certain morality that should supersede the government. That should supersede something. The government should not.
The age of consent for you?
It's not the age of consent. It's
you should stay on topic here.
I'm staying on topic.
What you are doing is you are deflecting to other topics.
I understand what I'm watching. I'm watching two retards fighting. Is what I'm. I don't know anything about this Moistcritikal guy. I don't know his general character, but he's not prepared for this debate. And Sneako's just a fucking tool. Sneako has got the most. He's got the easiest position though, because all Sneako has to do is he knows the 1 or 2 or 3 basic questions that work on religious people to challenge that work on non-religious people. He knows the basic questions to just make them realize that they don't actually know where their morals come from, even on things that seem obvious, like incest. That's a very easy debate to have.
You have still not directly said that you think it is a bad thing for an adult to marry a child. Like, you are still unable to say that. Now,
but you haven't even defined child.
The definition of child.
I have. My definition is anything under 18.
That's exactly what a child is.
Yeah, I think that is a great line in the sand. If you are under 18, you are a child.
It's not a great line in the sand. But that's not even the definition of child. You're going off of your own definition.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Like, who cares? Yes. Why? If 18 is the established point, you are out of high school going to college. If that is the point where everyone has agreed you're an adult past this point, why argue against it?
Why argue? Because if the government decides to push the age of high school, if they try to lower it, if they said that you can vote at a different age, then your morality changes based off of the law. And I'm saying that you need to have a consistent morality that does not change with the government and that does not change with the people that live in your country. It has to supersede that. You can't just say because of high school, because of college, this is the set in stone age forever.
Okay, I want you.
You kind of can, because the way that we decide the 18 line is justified in large part by the fact that this is when we've decided people are ready for adulthood. Yeah. There could theoretically be a world where we've decided that people are cognitively developed enough to finish school at 17 and start working and be emancipate at 17, and then the age of consent might change. But again, that would lead you into all different explanations for why you've done that. Charlie should just say 18 is arbitrary, but that's okay. No, you have to go a step further. You go the step of saying that it's arbitrary. It's kind of arbitrary, but it's not really, actually. It's not really arbitrary, but if you say it is, you have to be arbitrary to some degree, because you can't find out when every single person is mature enough to have sex. You can't do that. Because they all get mature enough at different stages. So what you can do is you can find what's a cutoff point that includes most of the people, like almost all the people who are mature enough to have sex, and excludes almost all the people who are not mature enough to have sex. And that seems to be 18, because 18 is a good year for when it comes to people starting their first, starting jobs or coming out of school, or just like generally in society being treated like an adult. It doesn't have to be that way. There could be a society where those parameters all change at 19 or 20 or 17, right? When you start getting to like 16, 15, 14, you get into more just like cognitive levels of maturity. Couldn't the parents decide? Absolutely fucking not, you nonce fuck. Why the fuck would you say let the parents decide? Is that like that's like your fucking homeschool Skeeter fucking tobacco chewing? What? No, you don't let the parents decide. God. Parents should be allowed to decide absolutely nothing, okay? In terms of general standards for how you for kids and adulthood and shit like that, fuck off. No, parents are the least trustworthy people. Fuck that. Anyone who ever says things like, since you believe XYZ, I can tell you don't have children. I can tell you don't have children. And it's because I've said something like, I don't know, I think it should be okay sometimes for kids to take medication for their mental health if they're like 17.
You, Sneako, to set an age in stone right now for the age of consent, age of marriage. What is that to you?
I told you that there is no age of marriage. It has to be based off maturity.
That's how it was for millennia. Yeah, and it was shit. Fuck it. No, it was horrible. What are you talking about? Dying at 30 was normal for a long time as well, okay? I prefer this world, okay? I prefer this world. Sorry.
And it has to be based off of whether it's going to be harmful, and it has to be based off the consent of the parents. It has to be healthy. If I want to marry a girl, I have to first ask her father. I have to ask her brother.
And the father's perfect. The father knows what's best for the child at all times.
And I have to ask her mother, and the daughter has to consent. If all three parties are consenting, and then my family's consenting, that's fine. That's what a marriage should be based upon.
It's character.
All that happens, and it's a 14-year-old. Now what?
If the 14-year-old is mature and I'm 16, say I went through puberty as well,
You're not 16,
and I'm 17 or I'm 18. See, the problem with this is that you have a specific idea of where the age is. But if I'm 17 and I'm mature, and I meet a 14, a 15-year-old, and I'm okay, I'm mature, my family's okay, I asked the daughter, I asked the daughter's father for the hand of marriage.
You're in your 20s.
I went on this already.
Does it change?
Your scenario earlier was if a 16 and a 21-year-old, if both parties were if the father was okay with it, the mother was okay with it, why not? Give me a reason why tell me a reason why that's wrong. Because you're getting
a child, one is not a child. That's the point. So the 14-year-old, all of those criteria we just checked, you're in your 20s.
The definition that we just agreed upon, that's not true. Child is somebody that is not physically mature yet. It has nothing to do with 18. That's not what
we agreed upon. We agreed upon 18.
You agreed. We didn't agree with that.
Treated 18.
That's not true. That's not true across the whole world.
Sensible people, even your own community has agreed upon 18 for the most part. So I've seen a lot of the tweets when you go on these tangents. Most people say it should be 18. And Sneako's arguing that parts of
Sneako's fans calling him a nonce. Oh shit.
The world are different, so it gets muddy. But the agreed upon for the majority of people is 18.
That's not true. That's just not true across the world.
So you see when you argue against that, why it looks so weird. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand because people have been brainwashed with this. Let me ask you this: people in your
brainwashing is concerning.
Okay. Is this how he's
repackaging the fucking nonce package now? Is this how he's repackaging the nonce argument? This is what we've been brainwashed with. Oh no. When you're seeing through the matrix, that's when it's okay to fuck a 15-year-old. Is that what it is? As long as she's reached maturity, right? As long as she's reached puberty. What if the 15-year-old can consent? Assuming it's possible, presuming that a 15-year-old could actually have all the maturity of an adult 20-year-old or whatever, and then the chances are that they don't, though. Most likely they don't. So that's why it just makes sense to have them way below that cutoff line, so you don't ever run into those issues.
Hardest.
Sneako donated $5 on Twitch. If the 14-year-old is stacked, she is an adult. Oh no. Oh no. I'm guessing that's not the real Sneako. I'm just guessing.
So the majority of Europe is 16. Is everybody in Europe who abides by that, who abides by the law, are they pedophiles?
No, because he's called Sneako Live, isn't he?
Yeah, in my
They
eyes,
are?
100%. And
Okay.
in European society, too.
Fine.
If you have someone in their 20s that is f***ing and marrying a 16-year-old, they, too, are excommunicated.
No,
from
not
society,
excommunicated. Are they pedophiles?
Yeah, I would say yes.
They're pedophile. Okay, so-
The way Americans say pedophile, it's so disgusting. Pedo? Why?
So the majority of people that follow the law in
Whoa,
Europe
dude,
are
you're
pedophiles
such a
according to
pedo.
Moistcritikal.
Pedo?
Yes, sir. It's a yes or
If they
no.
are an adult,
Pedo?
f***ing under 18-year-old, even if it's 16 legally, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And in America, the majority of the states, it's 16. Are those people who follow the law of the land, are they pedophiles for following the... So the majority...
You keep saying the law of the land.
That's what it is. The majority
It's
of
not.
states, it's 16.
Oh yeah, say aluminium. Why do Americans always do this? Why do Americans sit there to a person who's living in fucking Scotland and be like, "Hey, Lonerbox, Lonerbox, why don't you say Lonerbox? Why don't you say
If you,
aluminum? Why? It's just you and fucking 15 of your mates bunched around the fucking laptop, being like, "Watch this, guys. Watch this. Hey, Lonerbox. Fuck off.
I want you right now, Sneako.
Watch how he says aluminum. He's gonna. Ooh.
If you go to any of those states where it's 16 and you fuck a 16-year-old, it's statutory rape. It is still statutory rape. It doesn't apply. That's not what that means.
Romeo,
That's
okay,
not how that
we
works.
went in,
This debate. You guys deserve Trump, just so you know. If this is how you guys operate, you deserve Trump. Okay.